time of the combat rogue is finally here. Starting in this upcoming phase of Classic Wrath is when you really see that damage begin to take off. Besides being a required spec for the 4% physical damage buff now that Arms Warrior is all but extinct, combat is virtually even with assassination and single target damage and performs exceptionally well this phase due to potential cleave damage. So let's get into it and find out how to gear your combat rogue with the best new loot from TOGC. I use Simonize's great rogue sheet with 3-minute encounters and all comparisons are done alliance side, but item differences as Horde should be pretty much the same, with maybe an exception for weapons, which I'll get to later. Spec, buffs, etc. are all standard. Starting with the Helm, there are actually quite a few available upgrades for you. Combat isn't constrained by any set bonuses from tier 8, so many of these slots can be upgraded immediately. The 4-piece bonus isn't excellent, but it's nice to have, pretty easy to acquire, and the pieces themselves often end up being overall BIS regardless. There are 4 upgrades for your Murmuron's flight goggles this phase, including the Rogue Helm from Onyxia. If you remember, that's dropping this phase too, and it's actually a solid quick upgrade if it does drop for you. The Hood of Lethal Intent from badges is technically a small upgrade, but it really isn't worth the emblems you spend on it. You'd be better off saving them and getting the eye level 245 tier helm with those emblems plus a Trophy of the Crusade. Using the 258 tier token here to replace the 245 piece was a solid upgrade, although if you only have one right away, I can't say that it's the best initial upgrade compared to another slot. Not unlike Assassination, there are a few, probably the same, slots where there's only one upgrade, and that is the case with neck pieces. The Heroic Charge of the Demon Lord is your only upgrade from Pendulum of Infinity, which is still very much worth having. It is only about 40 DPS behind it. If you haven't been able to get that from General Vezix, then you're probably first in line for this big Jaraxxus neck. If not, or if you're just unlucky, then the new 10-man Heroic Collar of Ceaseless Torment is a good option too. In full BIS, the shoulder slot will be the 258 tier piece. However, there are 3 totally viable options here that could be used in different situations. Duststalker shoulder pads being the odd item out, they're mostly useless, unless you have spare emblems on a new alt or something. The 245 tier, Snow Bandit, and Intruder shoulders are all within 5 DPS, but require different setups to best utilize them. The tier shoulders and the Intruder shoulders all have expertise on them. Since combat rogues get plenty of passive expertise, you only really need 2 pieces with a stat on them to reach your cap. While the Heroic tier is your best overall, I wouldn't suggest this to be your first 258 token purchase. The Intruder shoulders still hold up, and the 245 tier with the trophy would be a useful upgrade over Intruder if it helps you hit a set bonus. The Snow Bandit shoulders drop from Renubarak on 10-man and Heroic, and are a very handy piece to have for gear flexibility while gearing up to your phase 3 BIS, since they don't have expertise on them. Absolutely nobody's surprise, the big 50 out of 50 attempt cloak, Varisa's Dexterity, aka Sylvanas' Cutting, is your best in slot. You only get one of these cloaks every time you clear 25 man without wiping once, and there's no guarantee that it's this one. And if it is, everybody who can use it will want it. That said, there are 2 other cloaks in TOGC that are smallish upgrades over your phase 2 best in slot. The 10-man 50 out of 50 cloak is much easier than the 25-man one, the Serrated Blades or Silver Covenant cloak, but there is another 258 cloak that drops off Heroic Beast of Northrend that is virtually even with it. I'd recommend picking up one of the 2 because you may just be waiting the entire phase to get your number 1 cloak. In the chest slot, the Heroic tier piece is BIS yet again, but there is a pretty useful Heroic chest piece here as well. The Cuirass of Calamitous Fate off Jaraxxus is a solid upgrade from Embrace of the Gladiator. The 245 tier is actually not quite as good as Embrace, which I suppose makes sense as its item level is actually a little bit lower. It could be useful over Embrace to acquire one of the set bonuses. If you're fortunate enough to come into a relatively quick 258 tier token, this is probably where I'd spend it first. It's a solid 101 DPS upgrade for your phase 2 item, and you can just set and forget about it until ICC without having to juggle off pieces for it. There's one clear bracer upgrade that is better than the rest, and that's the Dark Determination bracers that drop off of Nubarak and 25 Heroic. The Solar Bindings and Fluxing Energy Coils were really close in phase 2, but keep in mind that the Solar Bindings are an expertise piece and makes them essentially unusable if you have the tier 9 helmet and shoulders equipped. If you have to drop a tier piece for them, it's best to switch your shoulders to the Snow Bandit ones. Most likely you won't find yourself in a situation like that though, since it's pretty easily solvable just to get the new leatherwork and crafted bracers of Swift Death. They're better than both the Ulduar options and don't have expertise, so just go ahead and use those while you wait for your final BIS option to drop. The gloves are 100% a tier piece slot. The only other relevant item that's new in the phase drops from Faction Champs and 10-man. They are pretty decent 30 to 40 DPS upgrade if you happen to run into them early on in the phase, but you'll probably want to replace them pretty fast. You'll just need to acquire the emblems in a trophy or maybe your second 258 tier token. The Soul Devouring Cinch was your undisputed best belt in Phase 2, but it ranks comparatively kinda poorly in Phase 3. Don't get me wrong, it's still good, but only if you can use the expertise on it. The belt will have to be replaced by the time you equip your tier helm and shoulders, and there's only one real option in the Belt of the Merciless Killer that drops when Twin Valks on 25 heroic. If you're stuck using the belt for a while, then an actually decent non-tier, non-expertise option here is using the Bloodfang Hood from Onyxia in your helm slot. The legs are your preferred off-piece from your main gear set. All that hit rating is good for combat rogues, and it's almost 50 DPS over the 258 tier legs that you'd have to spend a valuable token on, so just never do that. They're ahead of your previously best leg guards of Cunning Deception by more than 160 DPS, so this is a pretty huge upgrade, and none of the other options are really worth it. This is one of your largest individual upgrades that you'll likely see for yourself in Phase 3. There are two potential boot upgrades in Phase 3, one each from 10 and 25 man. Obviously the 25 man Treads of the Ice Walker are best, but the Asamal boots can be used in certain situations. Those situations are one where you can actually utilize expertise on them. If you can, there's a small upgrade over the Footpath Silence that you were using in Ulduar. They're still worth picking up regardless if nobody actually needs them for expertise flexibility when gearing up. Unlike Assassination, there are two new BIS rings in TOGC instead of just one. Brand Signet Ring from the Algalon quest item is still good, and so is Bane of Lights, however they are just edged out by the new Planestalker Signet that drops from Heroic Draxus in 10 man. The Ring of Callous Aggression is certainly your overall BIS ring, and that drops off Heroic Faction Champs on 25 man. In case you don't have two of the four previously mentioned rings, I did include the Dexterous Brightstone ring here. It's bought with the new Emblems of Triumph, and it's pretty much on par with the normal version of the Callous Aggression ring, and Loop of the Agile, which is a 10-man Ulduar ring that can now be bought with a new Heroic Plus currency. You probably already knew it, but your new best trinket is Death's Verdict, aka Death's Choice. This is a solid upgrade over Mjolnir Runestone or Dark Matter for a combat rogue, but as long as you have Comet's Trail, which is still BIS for your second trinket slot, it's probably better for some other classes. This is going to be a pretty hotly contested item, as this is the only new trinket really worth anything for physical DPS. I'll say it again, Comet's Trail from Algalon 25 and Ulduar is still BIS in Phase 3. It's still worth doing and getting that trinket if you haven't already. And if you're not the most fortunate rogue ever that has both DV and Comets, then Mjolnir Runestone is very easy to acquire now that you can buy it with a new Essence currency. There's a bunch of new ranged weapons to choose from, but they're all pretty minor in terms of upgrades. There's two new 10-man bows that are basically even with the Skyforge crossbow if you never ended up getting that in Ulduar. And there are also two new ones at 25-man that are pretty solid upgrades from Zed's Skyforge crossbow. One from Draxus and one from the pretty easy to get tribute chest. You just need to not wipe more than 25 times. Weapons are significantly different from what's been used up until now. Due to simple item availability, your new weapons will actually be axes. Previously, we were most likely close quarters combat, aka fists and daggers. Now it'll be hack and slash, axes and swords. I'll compare it with the CQC options in a second. You'll want a slow main hand with instant poison, and the best Phase 3 one is a Stormpike Cleaver for Alliance, and Hellscream Slicer for Horde that drops off Heroic Anubarak in 25 man. This is a significant upgrade over everything else, and you should switch to hack and slash immediately if it goes to you. The Lion's Maw or Frostblade Hatchet from 10-man Heroic can be used as a stopgap upgrade from Cyrillus if you need to. There is also a new BIS Axe offhand weapon as well. The Lionhead Slasher for Alliance and Blood Fury for Horde. Unlike the main hand slot, it's not quite as big of an upgrade. Instead, the second overall BIS is the Void Saber from Ulduar 10-man, which is actually better than the new 10-man sword in TOGC. Axes technically benefit orcs more due to racials and swords for humans, but eventually these racials don't really mean a thing. There's also a new BIS Axe offhand weapon as well, the Lionhead Slasher for Alliance and Blood Fury for Horde. Unlike the main hand slot, it's not quite as big of an upgrade. Instead, the second overall BIS is the Void Saber from Ulduar 10-man. It's actually better than the new 10-man sword in TOGC. Axes technically benefit orcs more due to racials and swords for humans, but eventually these racials don't really mean a thing. Expertise is plentiful as long as you've taken the talent, and even 2 pieces slightly overcaps you. So you might be wondering how the CQC options compare to the hack and slash ones. There is one upgrade for you with the fist and dagger route, and that's the Steel Blade Breaker, an item that is actually BIS for assassination rogues, and they'd like 2 of them. There is a 10-man main hand fist weapon, but it's not as good as the Golden Serenite Dragon from Ulduar. Your previous BIS, the GSD and Blade Twister combination, are 290 DPS behind the combo of the 2 new axes. This is on par with using Cyrillus main hand and the new axe offhand with Hack and Slash. GSD and Blade Twister is still better than using Lion's Maw main hand and the Void Saber offhand. So if you're wondering when to switch from CQC to Hack and Slash, the answer is this: whenever you get one of the 2 BIS axes. If you get the main hand, that's huge. If you get the offhand, you can freely upgrade Cyrillus to the new 10-man axe until the 25-man axe drops. If for some reason you got a Steel Blade Breaker dagger, then you should not switch to Hack and Slash until you've gotten the new main hand axe. That's it. If you have any questions, drop them below in the comments or come by on Twitch, link below in the description to catch me live. If you like the sort of content and want to help support this channel, be sure to like this video and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you next time.